Victoria Hayes. I was 31 years old, and 5 months ago, a semi-truck ran a red light at 55 miles per hour. It slammed directly into my side of the car, shattering my right femur into 7 distinct pieces. When I woke up in the intensive care unit, high-dose pain medication was dripping through my IV, and my brain felt like it was wrapped in a thick fog. I couldn't sit up, I couldn't think clearly, and my hand was shaking so violently I could barely hold a pen. My father was standing right beside my hospital bed, holding a stack of papers. A power of attorney for my medical and financial affairs, along with the settlement agreement for my $230,000 accident payout. He promised he would handle everything. He said he would protect the money, pay my overwhelming medical bills on time, and make sure my future was fully secured while I went through the long, painful process of learning how to walk again. So I signed. I signed because I was trapped in that hospital bed, completely immobilized. But more than that, I signed because he was my dad. For 5 whole months, I trusted him without a shadow of a doubt. I poured all my energy into physical therapy, letting the severe bodily pain dictate every single day. I never checked the accounts, because deep down, I didn't want to harbor suspicion against the only blood relative I had left. Then came a morning before the sun was even up, and my phone started ringing. Dr. Reeves was calling at 6:18 in the morning. If there's one thing everyone should know about the American healthcare system, it's this. If your primary physician calls you before 7 a.m., it is never good news. Never. I was already awake anyway. Severe pain has a way of turning sleep into an impossible luxury. My right leg was throbbing with a deep bone-level ache that no prescription painkiller could numb anymore. It had been 5 months since the crash. 5 months of intense physical therapy. 5 months of relearning how to take a single step. And 5 months of watching my personal savings evaporate while I remained unable to work due to my physical condition. I answered on the second ring. Victoria, it's Dr. Reeves, he said, his voice carrying that careful, measured tone doctors use when they're preparing to break terrible news. I just received your latest imaging results. We need to talk about your femur. My hand tightened around the phone. How bad is it? A vascular necrosis. The bone tissue is failing. Because blood supply was cut off, we're looking at a severe risk of the bone structure collapsing. He paused, and I could hear him carefully selecting his words. We need to operate within 72 hours, possibly sooner. 72 hours. 3 days. I had 3 days to save my right leg. How much is it going to cost? I asked, bracing myself for an astronomical number. $125,000. Your primary medical insurance won't cover it. They've categorized it as a pre-existing complication from your auto accident, which falls under an exclusion clause. I closed my eyes. I thought of my settlement money, that $230,000 paid out 3 months ago from the trucking company's insurance. The emergency fund that was handed over to my father to manage while I was heavily medicated on prescription opioids. All right, I said, taking a deep breath. I need to access my settlement trust account. Victoria, I need to be completely clear with you, Dr. Reeves added, his tone growing intensely serious. If we don't perform this surgery within the next 10 to 14 days, you're looking at a full hip replacement before age 35. Or something even worse. He was talking about total permanent loss of mobility, or even losing the leg entirely. He didn't say the word directly, but the message was crystal clear. After hanging up, my hands shook as I opened the mobile banking app on my phone. The dedicated account where my father was listed as the sole trustee. The fund meant to protect my entire future while I recovered. Account balance, $35,000. I stared at the screen, blinked hard, and refreshed the app over and over. $35,000? In less than 2 months, $230,000 had shrunk to $35,000? A cold wave of shock hit my chest. That couldn't be right. It had to be a system glitch, a banking error, or a massive misunderstanding. I dialed my father's number once, twice, and on the third attempt, he finally picked up. "Victoria, sweetheart, it's barely light outside. Where is my money?" I asked. My voice was completely flat, eerily quiet. George. It was that dead silence that happens when your brain simply cannot process the scale of the disaster right in front of you. There was a suffocating silence on the line. Then, in the background, I heard her. "Brenda, my stepmother." Her voice was muffled, but still sharp and aggressive. "George, your money is fine," my dad finally spoke, but his voice had that classic guilty, caught red-handed tone I'd known my whole life. It was the exact tone he used whenever he missed my piano recitals or skipped my graduation because something more important came up. "Dad, there's only $35,000 in the account. There's supposed to be $230,000. George. Where did the rest of it go?" Another pause. Even longer this time. "We invested it," he finally blurted out. "We put it into Austin's company, Game Launch Studios. It's a brand new mobile gaming startup. Huge upside potential, Victoria. Once it turns a profit, the return rate is going to be, you took my emergency medical settlement and put it into Austin's startup?" Austin. George. Brenda's 23-year-old son from a previous marriage, my stepbrother. The guy who had dropped out of 3 different college programs and whose biggest achievement in life so far was having 50,000 followers on Instagram. It was a family decision. Brenda's voice suddenly cut in, clearly grabbing the phone. "George. Victoria, you need to understand that Austin has been right here supporting you over the last few months. He's part of this family that cared for your recovery. You need to learn how to share. Share." George. I looked down at my right leg, staring at the massive scar running from my hip down toward my ankle, thinking about the metal pins holding my bones together, and looking at the crutches resting against the bed. "How much?" I asked. "What? How much did you give him?" Dead silence returned to the line. "Dad," I said, stressing every single word. "George, how much of my settlement did you transfer to Austin?" $195,000, my father whispered, his voice barely audible. "But Victoria, you have to understand." I hung up the phone. My hands were trembling, not out of fear, but from a cold, sharp clarity that settled deep into my chest. It felt just like those metal pins locked inside my leg. George. I tapped on the transaction history in the banking app. February 14th, Valentine's Day. I was lying in the ICU, fresh out of my first major operation, barely conscious. On that exact day, my father wire transferred $195,000 to Game Launch Studios LLC. This didn't happen after a discussion. It wasn't a sudden decision made a few weeks ago. George. Long before I even realized I would need those funds for urgent surgery to save my leg. The money was already gone. I had 72 hours to figure out how to cover $125,000, or face catastrophic consequences. And my father, the man who swore to protect me, the man I entrusted with every cent of my future, had made his choice long ago. George. He picked his wife's son over his own biological daughter. Sitting alone in the dark before dawn, phone still clutched tightly in my grip. I felt something inside me break and realign completely. They thought I was weak and defenseless just because I couldn't walk. But they were about to learn that there is a massive difference between standing on 2 feet and taking a stand for yourself. George. If you've ever experienced the absolute heartbreak of having your own family stab you in the back when you needed them most, stay with me. Because this story wasn't over. It was only just beginning. Let me take you back to November 18th of last year at 4:32 in the afternoon. Phoenix, Arizona, at the intersection of Indian School Road and 32nd Street. George. That was the exact moment my life split into 2 distinct chapters, before and after. Before, I was Victoria Hayes, a licensed physical therapist at Desert Wellness Clinic. My daily job was helping accident victims recover, teaching them how to walk again, and helping them trust their bodies again. I was good at what I did, and I loved my career. The irony is almost unbelievable. George. I still remember my last patient that day, a 4-year-old girl named Lily who was recovering from a broken leg. She was so terrified that she'd never be able to run again. "You're going to run," I assured her. "I promise I'll get you back on your feet." 2 hours later, a semi-truck blew through a red light at 55 miles per hour. My Honda Civic was crushed like a cardboard box. Ouch. First responders had to use heavy rescue tools just to cut me out of the wreckage. 40 straight minutes of grinding metal sounds accompanied by my own screams, a severe compound fracture in my right femur, spinal trauma, and internal bleeding. Emergency medical technicians kept asking, "Ma'am, can you feel your leg? Can you feel your leg?" I couldn't feel a thing. Ouch. 3 days later, I woke up in the ICU, hooked up to an IV drip, surrounded by beeping vital monitors. My dad was sitting by the bed, looking like he had aged 10 years overnight. "Sweetheart," he gasped, his voice raspy and broken. Thank God. He was holding a stack of legal papers. My mind was far too hazy to process what they meant. Ouch. "The trucking company's settlement will be processed soon," he explained. "Their lawyers already called, but honey, in your current state you can't manage this kind of money. Look at you, you can barely keep your eyes open." I was heavily medicated on IV pain management, receiving high doses every hour, supplemented by heavy oral painkillers. Ouch. Nursing records later showed I asked the exact same question 6 times in a single hour. I couldn't even recall my home address. "I need you to sign a power of attorney," Dad said. "Just temporary, until you recover. That way I can manage the settlement funds for you, keep it safe, and make sure your medical bills are handled." The pen felt like a ton of bricks in my hand. Ouch. "Dad," I slurred out, "you'll protect this money for my medical care, right?" "I'd protect it with my life, Victoria. Blood is thicker than water. Family never betrays family. I'm your father." I signed my name. By December, I moved into my father's house because I couldn't climb the stairs to my second-floor apartment. Ouch. I couldn't shower on my own, cook meals, drive, or even take care of basic needs. Brenda converted the downstairs living room into my temporary bedroom. It had massive floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the backyard and their private swimming pool. "We're going to take care of you like you're our own daughter," Brenda said as she tucked a blanket over my legs. Ouch. She placed a heavy emphasis on the phrase, "like you're not," because I was, but like I was. Yet I felt grateful. Or at least I felt like I was supposed to be grateful. That's what a good daughter does, right? Show gratitude. I had no idea I was rolling straight into a trap. Actually, I wasn't even rolling. I was being pushed in a wheelchair right into it. Ouch. Brenda loved the word family. She used it as a psychological weapon. "Family means sacrifice, Victoria," she told me during dinner 3 weeks after I moved in. I had asked why Austin was sitting at the head of the dining table, the spot I grew up sitting in, the place my dad always kept reserved for me. "Austin lives here full-time," Brenda explained, as if delivering an absolute verdict. Ouch. "You're just staying here temporarily, until you get back on your feet." A temporary guest. In my father's home, the house where I grew up, I was treated like a temporary visitor. I was placed at the far end of the table, the spot saved for outsiders. "Family means presence and giving," Brenda continued, putting an extra piece of chicken onto Austin's plate. Ouch. "Austin is here every day helping care for you." I almost laughed out loud. Over the past 5 months, Austin had stepped into my room a grand total of 3 times. Once on Thanksgiving because my dad insisted on taking a family photo for Facebook. Once to borrow my laptop because his crashed. And once to pick up a package delivered to me by mistake. Ouch. In 5 months, that added up to about 3 hours and 20 minutes. But if I brought that up, I'd be labeled ungrateful, difficult, and not a team player. So I kept my mouth shut. "You know," Brenda said, slicing her chicken with precise movements, "true family gives without expecting anything back. That's what real devotion looks like." I noticed my dad wasn't looking at me. Ouch. He was staring intently at his plate as if it held the secrets of the universe. The manipulation was so seamless that I barely caught it at first. Barely. When April rolled around and I urgently needed money for surgery, Brenda's reaction was calculated to perfection. After everything we've done for you, she didn't yell. Yelling makes it easy for people to fight back. Instead, she acted deeply hurt and disappointed. Victoria, we opened our home to you, rearranged our whole lives, and provided round-the-clock support. Austin gave up his social life to be here, and now what do you want to do? Ruin his one big shot at success? That is my medical settlement, I said. It's meant for my health care. It's family resources, she corrected me. And family members take care of each other. Then why? I paused, taking a deep breath. Why didn't Dad ask for my consent before transferring that $195,000? You were consulted, my dad muttered quietly, still avoiding eye contact. Remember when we talked about investing, about making those funds work for the family's future? I had no memory of any such conversation. If it had happened, I definitely would have remembered. When I pushed further about February, I was in terrible shape back then. The medication had me. Dad, I was in the ICU in February. I was barely conscious for half that month. Brenda's smile didn't break for a second. You see, that's what I mean. The medication is messing with your memory, Victoria. Your mind isn't clear right now. You're becoming paranoid. There it was, textbook emotional manipulation. Make the victim question their own perception of reality. I need $125,000 for my surgery, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Doctor Reeves said I have less than 2 weeks, or I could permanently ruin my leg. Austin's company is at a critical development phase, Brenda chimed in. He can't pull funds out now. It would destroy the entire operation. As an adult, surely you understand how business works. I could lose my mobility. You're being overly dramatic, she said softly, using the gentle tone reserved for a throwing a tantrum child. Dr. Reeves is being overly cautious. You're young, you're resilient, you'll be fine. On the other hand, Austin's window of opportunity is tiny. This is his defining moment. I turned to my dad. Is that how you see this too? He opened his mouth, closed it, and looked over at Brenda. Victoria, he finally said, you're a smart woman. You know doing the right thing can be hard sometimes. This is an investment in our family's collective future. Austin's success benefits all of us, including you. I just need my medical recovery funds back. The funds are tied up in the business, Dad said. We can't just, you transferred them in a single day. You can transfer them back. A heavy silence fell over the room. Brenda pulled out her phone, scrolled through her photo gallery, and turned the screen toward me. Austin pushing my wheelchair. Austin helping me into the car. Austin handing me a glass of water. 15 photos. 20 photos, all carefully staged moments of care. This is what family looks like, Victoria. Austin was here every single day. He earned his place in this home. I stared at the Thanksgiving photo, the one where my dad acted like a director setting up a scene. Austin, stand behind her. Put your hand on the wheelchair. Smile. No, bigger smile. Make it look natural. 20 different angles taken for a single 30-second interaction. Family means presence and giving. Brenda repeated her favorite phrase. Sweetheart, Austin gave his effort. Now it's your turn to support him. I left the living room, limping back on my crutches to my modified bedroom. I opened my phone's notes app and logged every single one of Austin's supposed contributions. November 25th. Thanksgiving. 30 minutes, forced to pose for photos. December 10th. 15 minutes, borrowed my laptop. January 3rd. 20 minutes, picked up a misdelivered package. Total 3 visits, adding up to 1 hour and 5 minutes. Meanwhile, the visitor log I requested from the hospital painted a completely different picture. Rachel Cooper, my best friend, 12 visits. Colleagues from the clinic, 18 visits. College friends, 10 visits. Aunt Susan, my dad's sister, 5 visits. Austin Walsh, 0 visits. Kenneth Hayes, my father, 2 visits. Brenda Walsh, 0 visits. Family means presence and giving. Brenda was right about that concept. She just didn't realize she was proving my point entirely. The truth was, this wasn't the first time something like this had happened. For the past 5 years, I had been the backup plan for this family. Orch. I had simply chosen self-deception over facing the hard reality. Look at the pattern over the years. June 2016. My college graduation. I graduated summa cum laude with straight A's over 4 years, accepted into an incredibly competitive physical therapy graduate program. It was supposed to be my big day. My dad showed up 45 minutes after the ceremony ended. Orch. By then, I had already returned my cap and gown, and half the stadium was empty. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," he said, looking away. Austin urgently needed a laptop for his summer class. The Best Buy store was clear across town. You understand, right? I understood. My dad spent $2,800 that day, buying Austin a MacBook Pro for a summer course he dropped out of 6 weeks later. Orch. Meanwhile, I walked across that graduation stage completely alone. September 2017. I asked my dad for a $5,000 loan to cover the security deposit and first month's rent for an apartment near my clinic. I had just landed my first real job and needed to live closer due to long, early shifts. "I don't have that kind of money, Victoria," Dad claimed. "Things are really tight right now." Orch. 2 weeks later, Brenda posted a photo on Facebook of a brand new Jeep Wrangler parked in the driveway. Austin was leaning against it, throwing up a peace sign. The caption read, "Proud mom moment. Austin needs reliable transportation for his new job. Blessed, my baby boy." That Jeep cost $28,000. Orch. Meanwhile, I slept on Rachel's couch for 3 months until I saved enough to rent my own place. When I confronted him about the Jeep, Dad said, "Austin needed transportation for work, Victoria. You can take the bus. You're young. You're resilient." Resilient. I grew to despise that word. April 2019. Jason and I got engaged, and we planned a small engagement party. Orch. Nothing fancy, just close family and dear friends. Dad offered to host it. "My daughter is getting married," he told me, hugging me tight. "Let me do this for you." A week before the event, Brenda called. "Sweetheart, we have to cancel the party. Austin's graduate tuition is due, and Kenneth needs to help him out. We really can't afford the party right now. You understand, right?" Orch. The venue deposit was non-refundable. $1,200. I had to absorb that loss out of my own pocket. Austin dropped out of graduate school 1 semester later, wasting all the tuition money my dad paid. Jason and I split up 6 months after that. It wasn't directly because of the family drama. Or maybe it was. Maybe I had gotten far too used to always coming in second. Orch. Maybe I was just used to swallowing disappointment 3 distinct times. 3 major moments where I made excuses for them. Blended families take time to adjust, I used to tell myself. Dad loves me. He just shows it differently. I'm being selfish. I need to be more understanding. I gave him 5 years. Orch. 5 years of playing the easygoing daughter. The daughter who never complained, who always understood everything. And when I needed him most, when I was lying in a hospital bed with metal pins in my bones, terrified for my future, he took my 5 months of painful recovery and traded it away to win approval from his wife. $195,000. Orch. That was the price tag placed on my future. No, that's incorrect. That was the price tag placed on Austin's present. I was just the one forced to pay the bill. April 3rd, 10:15 a.m. An unknown number popped up on my phone. I almost ignored it, having dealt with endless spam calls, credit card promos, and extended warranty pitches all week. But an inner instinct prompted me to answer. Orch. "Miss Hayes, this is Helen Crawford. I'm your father's financial advisor." I sat up abruptly, gasping as a sharp spike of pain shot through my hip. "Helen, hello, is everything all right?" That's what I need to discuss with you. Is there any way you can meet me in person today?" The urgency in her voice made my stomach drop. "What's going on? Please, not over the phone." Orch. "There's a coffee shop called Bright Beans at the corner of Camelback Road and 24th Street. Can you make it there by noon?" Even though walking was a major struggle, I agreed. When I arrived, Helen was already waiting. She was in her 60s with graying hair and sharp, intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She had managed my father's finances for 12 years. I had seen her at holiday parties and summer cookouts, and she had even sent me a card when I graduated college. Seeing me struggle on my crutches, she immediately stood up. "Let me help you." "I've got it," I said, gritting my teeth. We sat down. She had already ordered a coffee for me, remembering exactly how I liked it. 1 cream, no sugar. That small act of genuine kindness almost broke my composure. "Victoria," she said, folding her hands on the table with a grave expression, "by sitting here, I am violating several professional ethical guidelines. But if I kept quiet knowing what I know, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night." She opened her laptop and pulled up an email interface, my father's inbox. "For administrative purposes, I have manager access to Kenneth's work email," she explained. "2 weeks ago, I saw something that deeply alarmed me." She turned the screen toward me. "Sender, Brenda Walsh. Recipient, Kenneth Hayes. Date, February 10, 2024, 11:47 p.m. Subject, Austin's opportunity, Kenneth. We need to finalize the funding for game launch immediately. Austin's partners can't wait any longer. If we don't inject that $200,000 by Friday, they're moving on to other investors. I know you're worried about Victoria finding out, but honey, think about this rationally. Victoria will be fine. She's young. She's resilient. She always finds a way. She's always taken care of herself. Austin needs this right now. This is his moment. This is our son's chance at real success. If you don't sign those transfer documents, I need you to realize something. I cannot stay in a marriage where my son comes to another woman's daughter. I need to know you're choosing us, choosing our family. You need to decide what matters most." I read it 3 times. Another woman's daughter. "Keep reading," Helen said softly. I scrolled down and found my father's response. Sender, Kenneth Hayes. Recipient, Brenda Walsh. Date, February 11, 2024, 6:22 a.m. Subject, Austin's opportunity. Brenda, you know I love Victoria. She's my daughter. But you're right, Austin is here. He's part of our daily life. Victoria has her own path, her own life. I'll sign the paperwork today. Please don't leave me. K. The entire room felt like it was spinning around me. "There's more," Helen added, bringing up bank statements and highlighting a specific entry in red. Date, February 14, 2024. Wire transfer to Game Launch Studios LLC. Amount $195,000. Authorized by Kenneth Hayes, legal representative for Victoria Hayes. Status, completed. Valentine's Day, I whispered. I was in the ICU. I had just come out of major surgery. I was barely conscious. "I know." Helen's voice strained with anger. "I called Kenneth that afternoon and asked if he was absolutely sure about this. As his advisor, it was my duty to protect your interests too. I told him, that's your daughter's medical settlement. That isn't a family investment fund. That's for her health and survival." "What did he say?" He said, and I quote, "Helen, you don't understand. If I don't do this, I lose my wife." She shut her laptop. "In 30 years in this industry, I've seen all kinds of behavior, but I have never seen a man whose fear of his spouse completely overpowered his basic moral conscience." She slid a thick manila folder across the table. It was filled with bank statements, email chains, and transfer receipts. These were obtained legally through my administrative access. "I'm handing this to you because I know you'll need it." Opening the folder, I saw months of paper trail. Dad asking Brenda for permission to spend money, Brenda making continuous demands, and Austin submitting endless wish lists. Helen pulled out a paper napkin, writing down a name and phone number. Jennifer Morrison, attorney specializing in family law and breach of fiduciary duty. She's the best lawyer I know. Tell her I sent you. I can't afford legal fees right now. She takes 2 pro bono cases every year. Tell her your story. Trust me. I looked at this woman who was risking her professional standing to hand me the exact leverage I needed to fight back. "Why?" I asked. "Why are you helping me?" Helen's eyes drifted slightly, filled with deep sorrow. Because 20 years ago, my sister trusted her husband to manage our parents' estate. He gave every penny to his brother's failing business. Orch. By the time she found out, the money was completely gone. She passed away buried in medical debt, all because her husband picked his brother over his own wife. She stood up and picked up her purse. I couldn't save my sister, but maybe I can help you save yourself. She walked out. Orch. I sat there for 20 full minutes, staring at that folder, staring at the hard evidence, staring at the paper trail of betrayal. This wasn't a sudden mistake. It was a planned, deliberate arrangement. While I was unconscious in a hospital bed, while I was completely vulnerable, while I placed my entire future in my father's hands, they sold away my recovery and called it family. Orch. I took out my phone and dialed the number written on the napkin. Morrison Legal Group, how can I help you? My name is Victoria's, I said, my voice firm and clear. Helen Crawford referred me. I need to take legal action against my father. Dr. Reeves didn't sugarcoat anything. He mounted the x-rays on the viewing light, showing an image that even a non-specialist could understand. Orch. Dark patches were spreading inside the femoral head like ink dissolving in water. A vascular necrosis, he pointed out. The bone is actively failing, Victoria. Without immediate surgical intervention, the hip structure will collapse entirely. How fast do we need to act? 10 days. 2 weeks at the absolute maximum. Orch. After that, he pointed to the darkest region, the damage becomes permanent. You'd be facing total joint replacement before 35, and if complications arise, severe loss of mobility. The weight of those words hung in the air like an absolute sentence. As for the cost? He handed me an itemized estimate laying out every overwhelming detail. Surgical team fees, $85,000 anesthesia, $12,000. Orch. Hospital stay, 3-5 days, $18,000 post-operative physical therapy, 6 months, $10,000 total. $125,000 insurance coverage, 0, reason. Pre-existing complication from primary accident. Can I set up a payment plan? I asked, though I already anticipated the answer. On a 3-year plan, that's $4,200 a month. Orch. Plus, hospital policy requires 20% upfront before scheduling, $25,000. Dr. Reeves sat across from me. Victoria, I know your history. I know you received that accident settlement. That money was meant specifically for moments like this. I couldn't bring myself to tell him the money was gone. The words simply wouldn't come out. Orch. I returned to my father's house, since I still couldn't live independently, and locked myself inside my converted room. I stared at my phone for an hour before finally calling Austin. He sent it straight to voicemail. I sent a text. Austin, we need to talk about that funding. I need urgent surgery. Can we please discuss retrieving a portion of the funds? Orch. 3 hours later, he replied, Vic, game launch is at a crucial stage right now. Pulling capital out now is impossible. Investors would lose their minds. Talk to Dad about it. I called again. It went straight through to a block line. My stepbrother had blocked my number. I opened his Instagram profile. He had posted a brand new update just 2 hours earlier. Orch. A photo showed a brand new, polished Tesla Model 3. He was leaning against the hood holding up a peace sign. Caption. New ride, new journey, blessed, startup life, big dreams ahead. I zoomed in on the background, the Phoenix Tesla dealership. I opened my mobile banking app to view the business account for Game Launch Studios. Orch. When my father set up the investment structure, he had mistakenly granted me view-only access. March 3rd. Withdrawal $50,000. Memo. Owner distribution. A. Walsh, March 3rd. The exact same day, Austin texted me claiming he couldn't pull funds out. On that very day, he used money meant to save my leg to buy a $52,000 luxury electric vehicle. I set a countdown timer on my phone. Orch. 10 days, 240 hours, 14,400 minutes. Every single hour, it chimed as a reminder that my time was slipping away while Austin was driving around in a vehicle funded by my medical settlement. The sadness was completely gone. In its place was a sharp, calculating focus. I had 10 days to reclaim my future, and I knew precisely where to start. Porch. At 7 p.m., Rachel arrived at my room carrying Thai takeout and her laptop. Rachel Cooper, my best friend from college. The person who visited me 12 times in the hospital. The person who held my hand when I broke down in tears from pain and exhaustion during physical therapy. Blood ties didn't make Rachel family. Genuine presence and support did. Porch. Helen called me, Rachel said as she unpacked the food containers. She gave me the main details. Vic, what on earth is going on? I handed her the manila folder. She read through it silently for 10 minutes, her jaw tightening with every page turned. Porch. Your dad, Kenneth Hayes. The man who coached your soccer team, taught you to ride a bike, and cried at your high school graduation. She looked up, her eyes filled with shock. That same Kenneth Hayes actually did this. Fear changes people, I said calmly. Dad was far more terrified of losing Brenda than he was of losing me. Rachel slammed her hands down on the table. Porch. This is completely unacceptable. We are going to a lawyer right now. We are going to get your money back, and we are going to hold them fully accountable. She opened her laptop and dialed a video call. Jennifer, this is Rachel Cooper. Helen Crawford gave me your contact information. Are you available for a brief video call? It is incredibly urgent. Porch. 2 minutes later, Jennifer Morrison appeared on screen. Sharp eyes, structured suit, looking every bit like the formidable experienced courtroom veteran who had grown completely immune to low tactics. Rachel delivered a rapid-fire summary of the situation within 5 minutes. Jennifer listened quietly without interrupting once. Porch. When Rachel finished, Jennifer remained silent for 10 solid seconds. Then she spoke. I am taking this case. I cannot afford your standard retainer, I began. Jennifer gently cut me off. I accept 2 pro bono cases per year. I only select matters that carry real meaning. Yours is my second for 2024. She leaned closer to the camera. Porch. Victoria. My mother passed away years ago, buried in medical debt because my uncle convinced her to sink her cancer treatment trust into his failing business. I was too young then to stop it or even comprehend what was happening. Her voice remained steady, but her expression turned intensely resolute. I could not protect my mother, but I promise I will help you protect yourself. Porch. What is our first move? I asked. First, preserve every single dollar remaining in your hands for essential survival costs only. Second, I will formally file a civil lawsuit tomorrow morning citing breach of fiduciary duty, undue influence, and financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. She pulled out a legal pad and began jotting down swift notes. Third, we take this to open court. Porch. A public courtroom. Every single email, every transaction, every deception. We will make them matters of public record. Your father breached his binding legal responsibilities to you. Let him account for those actions before a judge. Rachel squeezed my hand tightly. This is your chosen family, Vic. We are standing right beside you. Jennifer nodded. And true supporters fight for one another. Porch. Does next Tuesday work for you? I intend to complete filing before 9 a.m. Tuesday, April 8th, 9:15 a.m. Maricopa County Superior Court. Jennifer submitted the official filing. Case number CV202400003891. Plaintiff, Victoria Hayes. Defendants Kenneth Hayes, Brenda Walsh, Austin Walsh. The court clerk glanced up over her reading glasses. Porch. Ma'am, are you certain you want to proceed with this? Intrafamily litigation is extraordinarily draining. When they misappropriated my medical future, they ceased acting as my family, I replied. She stamped the documents. Best of luck to you, dear. I hope you recover what was taken. The following morning at 9 a.m., my father sent a text message. Family meeting tonight at 6 p.m. Porch. We need to discuss your future. Please be at the house. Not a request, a directive. Brenda was copied on the thread. Austin replied with a thumbs-up emoji. I messaged back. I will determine my own future. See you at 6 p.m., Dad. Do not make this situation any worse than it already is. At 5:58 p.m., I limped into the living room on my crutches. Porch. The room had been arranged like a formal intervention. 6 individuals sat in a semicircle: my father, Brenda, Austin, Aunt Susan, who looked visibly uncomfortable, Carol, a friend of Brenda's I had never met, and an unfamiliar man wearing a professional badge on his belt. Dr. Philip Norton, clinical psychologist. The air felt entirely sucked out of my lungs. Porch. Victoria, please take a seat, Brenda instructed, pointing toward an empty chair in the middle of the setup. It was structured like an interrogation seat. What is the meaning of this? This is a structured intervention, Dr. Norton said, using a smooth, polished professional tone. Your family is deeply concerned about your well-being. I turned to my father. Porch. You brought a clinical psychologist here to ambush me? We are worried about you, sweetheart, Dad said, refusing to meet my eyes. Ever since the crash, your behavior has been unpredictable. We are concerned your pain management medication might be impairing your judgment. My judgment? Porch. You have been persistently calling and demanding financial distributions, Brenda interjected, counting on her fingers. 5 calls in 2 days. You are skipping meals, you've lost 12 pounds, and you are acting with extreme hostility toward Austin. I am asking about the funds you misappropriated from my account. You see? Brenda turned toward Dr. Norton. Porch. This is precisely what we described. This level of aggression, these paranoid accusations. Dr. Norton opened a notepad. Miss Hayes, your family has shared some concerning patterns: an intense fixation on financial matters, emotional volatility, and difficulty accepting assistance. These can be indicators of medication interactions or post-traumatic stress. I am completely lucid. Porch. No one is claiming otherwise, Dr. Norton replied smoothly. However, we believe your current state might not be ideal for making complex long-term decisions. Your family cares about you. They want to help. Brenda retrieved several documents from her designer handbag and slid them across the coffee table toward me. Voluntary psychiatric evaluation and 72-hour observation consent. Porch. This is simply to ensure your safety and well-being, Victoria, Brenda said softly, adopting a caring tone. Once your stress subsides, we can sit down and discuss the finances, the family, and what makes sense for everyone involved. Porch. The underlying reality was obvious. If I agreed to a psychiatric hold, received forced sedatives, and was documented as incapacitated, they could freely maintain control over the settlement funds, stripping away my legal standing to challenge them. Austin kept his gaze fixed on the floor, avoiding my eyes entirely. Aunt Susan stared down at her hands. Porch. Carol nodded along as if the whole process was completely routine. Dr. Norton spoke again. Sometimes those closest to us see challenges we might overlook ourselves. Victoria, your family is stepping up for you. Now you need to take this step for your own recovery. I stared directly at my father. He was crying, shedding genuine tears, yet he said nothing. He offered no defense on my behalf. Porch. He sat there silently, allowing his wife to orchestrate a narrative designed to strip away my independence. No, I stated clearly. Victoria. I stood up, gripping both crutches tightly. I am signing nothing. I am mentally stable, and I am not paranoid. I am simply a person who trusted her father, only to experience severe betrayal. I looked my father straight in the eyes. Porch. While I was unconscious, you signed away my essential medical recovery funds. You chose your wife over your daughter. Now you are attempting to frame my anger over that betrayal as mental instability. I picked up the evaluation form and tore it straight down the middle in front of everyone. This meeting is over. I turned and exited the house. Porch. Forcing myself all the way out to my car, my hands began shaking uncontrollably the moment I got inside. I called Jennifer directly from the parking lot. They just attempted to push me into an involuntary psychiatric evaluation. My voice sounded raspy. They are escalating. Good. Jennifer's response was like solid steel. Let them escalate. Porch. Every improper tactic they attempt creates additional evidence against them. Victoria, you maintained your independence tonight. You did not sign. You stayed grounded. You held your boundary. I am genuinely alarmed. That is a completely natural reaction. They are behaving dishonorably. But you are not standing alone. Orch. First thing tomorrow morning, we are filing an emergency injunction motion to freeze every single account associated with those funds. Then we meet them in court, a venue where facts override manipulation. I rested my forehead against the steering wheel. Rachel is already en route to pick you up, Jennifer added. Stay with her until the hearing. Do not return to that house. Orch. Do not take their calls. Document every incoming message. You handled yourself exceptionally well tonight, Victoria. Standing firm and refusing to sign required immense composure. I don't feel composed. You don't need to feel composed. You just need to keep standing firm, even if you are using crutches. Jennifer's office looked like an organized war room. Documents covered the tables, and a large whiteboard displayed an intricate timeline. Her paralegal, Alice, was sorting filings into color-coded binders. Alice, this is Victoria, Jennifer introduced. Alice is assisting us in systematically dissecting your father's defense strategy. Alice looked up from her laptop, offering a firm smile. I have been reviewing the financial records provided by Helen. Victoria, your family didn't just divert funds. They left an exceptionally clear trail. She pulled up a spreadsheet. A wire transfer of $195,000 to Game Launch Studios, LLC, processed same day without financial advisor review or standard waiting periods. Brenda Walsh was physically present when the paperwork was executed, which Helen confirmed. Jennifer circled that date on the whiteboard. March 3rd. Austin withdrew $50,000 from the business account. Alice clicked over to another screen. 3 hours later, he completed a full cash payment of $52,000 for a Tesla Model 3. March 28th. A transfer of $15,000 from the game launch account to Brenda Walsh's personal checking account, listed as consulting fees. My stomach turned. They were openly dividing the funds. It reads like a straightforward distribution of diverted assets, Alice stated neutrally, and they left a complete paper trail behind. Jennifer pulled another folder containing medical records. December 2nd, the date you signed the power of attorney. Hospital logs indicate you were receiving continuous IV pain medication at high dosages alongside oral painkillers. She read directly from the report. Patient exhibits disorientation regarding time and location, repeatedly asking identical questions. Requires assistance for decision-making. Strongly advise against executing legal instruments without an independent advocate present. The nursing staff noted that on my chart? I asked, surprised. Yes, yet your father proceeded with the signature anyway. That represents classic undue influence during incapacity. Any authorizations executed under those documented medical conditions is legally voidable. She laid the medical records directly alongside the bank statements. Now, here is the critical piece of evidence. Jennifer opened her laptop and brought up an email from the records Helen provided, a message from Austin to Brenda. Sender. Austin Walsh. Date. February 9, 2024, 8:14 p.m. Subject. Funding. Mom, are you sure about this? Using Victoria's settlement doesn't feel right. She is going to need those funds. Sender. Brenda Walsh. Date. February 9, 2024, 11:32 p.m. Subject. Funding. Austin, don't overthink this. Victoria is Kenneth's daughter, not ours. You are my priority. You are our priority. She will find another way. She always manages. But this is your opportunity, your time. Kenneth will follow my lead on this. Trust me. I read the words repeatedly. Not ours. She put her exact intent in writing, Jennifer noted. It demonstrates a clear lack of familial duty toward you, proves she guided your father's decisions, and shows premeditation. Alice highlighted a specific line. Kenneth will follow my lead on this. That serves as a direct admission of exercising undue influence over the power of attorney holder. Jennifer began pacing the office, organizing her opening arguments mentally. Here is the evidence we bring to the court. Medical records documenting incapacity at the time of signature. Bank records confirming unauthorized asset transfers. Written communications showing premeditation. And expert testimony from Helen Crawford, a licensed financial advisor who managed your father's portfolio for 12 years. She turned toward me. Porch. Victoria, when we step into that courtroom, we are not simply requesting a return of funds. We are establishing that your father committed financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, that Brenda coordinated the diversion, and that Austin accepted the proceeds with full knowledge of their origin. What are the legal consequences for them? I asked. Porch. Kenneth will be formally stripped of fiduciary authority, ordered to repay the full balance plus interest, and could face regulatory reviews regarding any financial authorizations he holds. Brenda could face civil fraud determinations, and Austin's assets can be frozen until every dollar is fully accounted for. And regarding my medical care, Porch. You seek the recovery of your $195,000, legal fees, and applicable damages related to delayed medical care and emotional distress. Jennifer sat down across from me. Most importantly, you reclaim your standing. They attempted to silence your claims by questioning your stability. In court, the facts will be presented clearly and publicly. Alice handed me a witness roster containing 8 names: Helen Crawford, Rachel Cooper, Dr. Reeves, testifying on medical necessity and timing, 3 ICU nurses, a hospital social worker who documented family dynamics, and a forensic accountant who mapped every transaction. And what constitutes their defense? I asked. Narratives without documentation, Jennifer stated plainly. Porch. Deflections, excuses, and the hope that you would simply drop the matter. She opened a folder and pulled out a photo taken of me in the hospital, intubated, unconscious, and hooked up to monitors. This is how they viewed you, Jennifer said, as someone unable to hold them accountable. When the judge compares this photo directly against Brenda's email, stating, "Kenneth will follow my lead," she offered a calm, focused expression. Their position falls apart completely. May 15th. I barely slept the night before the hearing, not out of anxiety, but because I was thoroughly prepared. I had spent 6 straight weeks reviewing every document, memorizing the timeline, and running through every question Jennifer might pose. At 7 a.m., Rachel came to pick me up. Ready to see accountability in action? She asked. I am ready to present the truth. Jennifer met us outside the courthouse wearing a sharp navy suit, briefcase in hand, radiating total composure. Remember, she advised, we do not rely on theatrical appeals. We let the documentation speak for itself. Stay composed, stick to the facts, and do not engage with any emotional deflections. Courtroom B7 was filled to capacity with 25 people in the gallery. Rachel, Aunt Susan, who had severed ties with Brenda after the intervention setup, colleagues from my clinic, Helen Crawford, former university classmates, and a reporter from the Phoenix Tribune whom Jennifer had notified to ensure public transparency. At the defense table sat my father, Brenda, Austin, and their attorney, Mr. Patterson, a gentleman in his 70s who presented a friendly demeanor. Brenda brought several friends, while Austin sat staring down at his phone until the bailiff instructed him to store it away. All rise. Judge Patricia Harrison presiding. Judge Harrison entered the room, a seasoned magistrate in her 50s with nearly 3 decades of judicial experience. Jennifer had specifically hoped for this assignment, as Judge Harrison was known for efficiency, strict adherence to facts, and zero tolerance for fiduciary abuse. Be seated, Judge Harrison announced, opening a thick case file she had clearly reviewed in detail. We are here for a civil hearing regarding breach of fiduciary duty, undue influence, and financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Counsel, I have reviewed the filings. Attorney Morrison, you may proceed. Jennifer stood up, stepped into the center of the courtroom without checking notes, and turned toward my father. After 5 seconds of deliberate silence, she spoke. Your Honor, there is a fundamental question before this court. At what point does a parent abandon their legal and moral duty to a child? She paused briefly. The evidence will show it occurs when that parent signs away their child's medical future to satisfy the demands of another. Mr. Patterson stood up abruptly. Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative opening. Overruled. Proceed, counsel. Jennifer moved to the digital display, bringing up bank statements showing large, stark numbers. December 15, 2023 balance, $230,000. February 14, 2024 balance, $35,000. The plaintiff, Miss Hayes, received a $230,000 settlement following a severe collision. She entrusted these funds to her father, Kenneth Hayes, to cover necessary medical treatments and living expenses during her recovery. She clicked to the next slide. Wire transfer, February 14, 2024. Amount, $195,000. Recipient, Game Launch Studios LLC. Authorized by Kenneth Hayes, Power of Attorney. On February 14, while Miss Hayes was in the ICU recovering from surgery and heavily medicated, Kenneth Hayes executed a wire transfer of $195,000 to his stepson's business entity. A quiet murmur rippled through the gallery. Judge Harrison leaned forward, observing the screen closely. This occurred without Miss Hayes's knowledge, consent, or legal capacity. Mr. Patterson interjected. Your Honor, Mr. Hayes held a valid power of attorney, granting authority over financial allocations. Sit down, Mr. Patterson, Judge Harrison stated firmly. You will have your turn. Continue, Attorney Morrison. Jennifer projected the hospital records onto the screen. Medication log, December 2, 2023. Continuous IV pain relief alongside high-dosage oral painkillers. Nursing notes. Patient demonstrates disorientation regarding time and place. Memory impaired. Advises against executing legal instruments without an independent advocate. That was the precise condition under which the power of attorney was signed. Miss Hayes was medically incapacitated, and the defendant utilized that vulnerability to assume control over her funds. Click. Austin's Instagram post displaying his new vehicle appeared on screen. Timestamped March 3rd. 3 weeks later, Austin Walsh withdrew $50,000 from that business account and purchased a luxury vehicle using funds derived from Victoria's settlement. Aunt Susan gasped softly from the gallery. Judge Harrison struck her gavel. Quiet in the gallery, or I will have the room cleared. Jennifer displayed the email chain from February 9th. The courtroom fell silent as she read Brenda's words aloud. Victoria is Kenneth's daughter, not ours. You are my priority. Kenneth will follow my lead on this. She let the phrase linger in the room. Not ours. Despite claiming family unity, the defense even attempted an unauthorized psychiatric intervention last month in an effort to discredit Miss Hayes and invalidate her legal standing. Mr. Patterson jumped up. Objection. That matter is outside the scope of this hearing. It is part of the documented timeline, Your Honor. Jennifer presented the consent form from the intervention, a voluntary evaluation document signed in advance by Kenneth Hayes, executed alongside a hired private evaluator. The objective was clear: portray Miss Hayes as unstable to undermine her legal claims. Judge Harrison took the document, reviewed it carefully, and set her jaw firmly. Mr. Patterson, did your clients attempt to place the plaintiff under a mental health hold during an active financial dispute? Your Honor, they believed she was under distress. A simple yes or no, counsel. Mr. Patterson sat back down without answering. Jennifer turned to call her first witness. I call Helen Crawford to the stand. Helen was sworn in, calm and professional. Miss Crawford, what is your professional relationship with defendant Kenneth Hayes? I served as his financial advisor for 12 years. What transpired on February 14th? Kenneth requested a wire transfer of $195,000 from Victoria's settlement account to Game Launch Studios. What advice did you provide regarding that request? I explicitly advised against it. I informed him those funds represented Victoria's medical recovery trust, not discretionary capital. I told him directly, Kenneth, this is your daughter's medical future. Do not do this. And how did he respond? Helen's voice remained steady. He stated, Helen, if I do not do this, Brenda will leave me. I cannot lose her. Arch. Mutterings filtered through the gallery. Was Brenda Walsh present during this meeting? Yes. She sat beside him throughout the discussion, interrupting whenever I tried to explain the financial risks. She stated, and I quote, Victoria will manage. She is young. Austin needs this opportunity. Arch. Did she use the word need or want? Need. She emphasized that this was Austin's primary chance at success. Jennifer turned back to the judge. Your Honor, I submit the bank records confirming Austin Walsh's withdrawal of $50,000 on March 3rd. The exact day he texted Victoria claiming funds were entirely locked, and his subsequent vehicle purchase. Arch. Admitted. The vehicle purchase receipt and Austin's text message appeared side by side on the screen. The documentation required no extra commentary. The timeline spoke for itself. Mrs. Crawford, over your 12 years working with Kenneth Hayes, did you observe him demonstrating fear toward anyone? Yes. Toward his wife. Objection, Mr. Patterson called out. Speculation. Arch. I am asking for her direct professional observations, Your Honor. Overruled. You may answer. I observed Kenneth shift from an independent decision-maker to someone who deferred every financial choice to Brenda. He expressed constant anxiety about displeasing her. Jennifer walked back to her desk and presented the hospital visitor logs. Ms. Orch. Crawford, please read the visitor counts recorded for Victoria Hayes between November 18th and March 1st. Helen read from the official record. Rachel Cooper, 12 visits. Clinic colleagues, 18 visits. Classmates, 10 visits. Susan Hayes, 5 visits. She paused. Kenneth Hayes, 2 visits. Austin Walsh, 0 visits. Brenda Walsh, 0 visits. Orch. The gallery erupted into hushed chatter before Judge Harrison brought down her gavel. Order in the court. Jennifer's voice carried clearly across the room. Your Honor, the defense argued that Victoria should share her resources because Austin supported her recovery. Yet the official records show Austin never visited her a single time, while Kenneth visited twice in 4 months. Orch. Yet they redirected $195,000 of her medical settlement. She turned directly toward Kenneth. Mr. Hayes, can you explain to the court why your stepson was provided funds from a settlement meant for your daughter's medical care while she faced severe surgical complications? Mr. Patterson rose. Objection. Orch. Counsel is badgering. Withdrawn, Jennifer stated calmly. The records document the situation clearly. She faced Judge Harrison. Your Honor, I call the plaintiff, Victoria Hayes, to the stand. I walked toward the witness stand without using crutches. Jennifer had encouraged me to walk unassisted if possible. Show the court that you are standing on your own strength. 15 steps. Orch. Pain radiated through my hip, but I completed the walk. The bailiff administered the oath. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. I looked out at the gallery, catching Rachel's eye as tears welled in hers, and seeing Aunt Susan mouth the words, You've got this. Jennifer stepped forward, adopting a measured tone. Orch. Victoria, in your own words, describe what occurred following your accident. I took a deep breath and recounted the events clearly. The collision damaged my physical health, but the actions of the defendants impacted my financial security and medical recovery. They redirected funds intended for my care, calling it an investment. Orch. They utilized a power of attorney executed while I was incapacitated, and when I questioned those actions, they attempted to undermine my credibility. I looked directly at my father. Silent tears were running down his face. My father used to tell me that family never betrays family. But when financial self-interest intervenes, commitments can be easily abandoned. I turned toward the bench. Orch. Your Honor, they treated my recovery fund as an available resource. When I required urgent surgery and requested the return of my money, I was told I needed to share. But genuine support involves mutual responsibility, whereas this was a unilateral taking. My voice remained steady and clear. George. Family support should mean protecting someone when they are vulnerable, not diverting their essential resources for personal convenience. My father had a fiduciary duty to preserve those settlement funds for my health care until I recovered. Instead, he yielded to external pressure and allowed those funds to be redirected. I turned my focus to Brenda. George. You stated that family implies mutual support. On that point, I agree. Support was shown by Rachel, by Jennifer, by Helen, and by friends who visited me dozens of times. You visited 0 times, yet you moved swiftly to claim $230,000 for your son's venture. Austin kept his eyes locked on his hands, avoiding eye contact entirely. George. That $195,000 represented 8 months of critical physical therapy and timely surgical care. Those resources were diverted for a startup and a luxury vehicle. I addressed Judge Harrison once more. Your Honor, this experience taught me that setting firm boundaries is not an act of hostility. It is a necessary measure to protect oneself from exploitation. George. I learned that chosen relationships built on genuine accountability matter far more than obligations used to justify unfair treatment. I looked at my father one final time. Dad, you compromised our relationship on February 14th when you prioritized Brenda's demands over my medical needs. You signed away my financial security to preserve your own comfort. My voice softened slightly. George. I spent years hoping to be treated as a priority, consistently placed behind Austin, behind Brenda, and behind everyone else's demands. I assumed that being patient and understanding would eventually lead to mutual respect. Instead, you chose your own convenience over my well-being. I wiped away a single tear and stood tall. So this is my boundary. I choose myself. I choose my health. George. I choose the people who are actually here for me. I'm done waiting for you to become the father you promised you'd be. The courtroom went dead silent. Judge Harrison was scribbling notes, fast and furious. Jennifer said softly, "Thank you, Victoria. No further questions." Patterson stood up, getting ready for cross-examination. George. Miss Hayes, isn't it true that you've had a history of conflict with your stepmother? Counselor. Judge Harrison's voice sliced through the room like a blade. Sit down. I've heard enough. Patterson froze. Your Honor, I haven't even presented our defense. You don't have a defense. Sit down. He sat right back down. George. Judge Harrison took off her glasses and stared down Kenneth with absolute coldness. Mr. Hayes, stand up. My dad stood up, shaking like a leaf. Are you aware that you breached your fiduciary duty to your daughter? Silence. Answer the question. Yes, Your Honor. Are you aware that you allowed your wife to manipulate you into taking your own child's assets while she was incapacitated? George. His voice cracked completely. Yes. Do you have anything to say in your own defense? Kenneth turned to look at me. He opened his mouth, closed it, and finally said, No, Your Honor. Judge Harrison put her glasses back on. This court rules in favor of the plaintiff. George. Kenneth Hayes and Brenda Walsh are hereby ordered to return $195,000 plus statutory interest at 6%, amounting to $11,700 for a total of $206,700. Payment must be made in full within 30 days. Furthermore, the defendants will cover all of the plaintiff's legal fees, estimated at $25,000. She wasn't done yet. George. In addition, I am ordering an immediate freeze on all assets belonging to Austin Walsh until full restitution is made. This court finds that Mr. Walsh knowingly profited from these misappropriated funds, and he will share joint liability. Bang! The gavel came down hard. Kenneth Hayes, your power of attorney over Victoria Hayes is permanently revoked. George. Unless specifically authorized by this court, you are barred from managing anyone else's finances but your own. This court is referring this matter to the Arizona Attorney General's office to investigate potential criminal financial exploitation. The courtroom erupted into total chaos. Rachel rushed over, wrapped her arms around me, and started sobbing. Arch. Jennifer walked over to shake my hand, and while she kept her cool, professional composure, her eyes were shining. Across the aisle, Brenda was screaming at Kenneth. Full-blown, hysterical screaming. "You idiot! You just sat there and let her walk all over you. You didn't even try to fight back." Kenneth just sat there like a deflated balloon. Arch. Austin was frantically pounding away on his phone, probably calling his lawyer about the asset freeze. Aunt Susan pushed through the crowd and gave me a tight hug. "I am so sorry, Victoria. I really didn't know. I didn't see who they truly were. But I see it all now." Helen Crawford was waiting for us near the door, professional as always. But she gave me a quick wink. "Nice job, Miss Hayes." Arch. As we walked out of the courthouse, a reporter from the Phoenix Tribune stepped up. "Miss Hayes, could we get a quick interview?" Jennifer was about to wave him off, but I held up a hand to stop her. "Sure, I have something to say." I looked right into the camera. "If your family is exploiting you, financially, emotionally, or in any other way, setting boundaries isn't a betrayal. Arch. It's self-preservation. Blood doesn't give anyone a license to mistreat you. Walking away from a toxic family isn't giving up. It's choosing yourself." The reporter nodded. "That's going on tomorrow's front page." That night, Rachel, Jennifer, and I got pizza together. Jennifer's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and smiled. Austin's lawyer just filed a motion to challenge the asset freeze. Arch. Judge Harrison gave it a hard no in writing. Here's her exact note. "Mr. Walsh can challenge this ruling once he hands over the Tesla he bought with those stolen funds." We completely lost it. We were laughing so hard we were crying. It was the first time in 6 months I felt that light. It wasn't even about the money, though getting it back was going to save my life. Arch. It was because I told the truth in front of everyone, and for once I was heard. The asset freeze hit Austin hard within hours. His bank accounts were locked down. His Tesla was impounded by court order pending repayment. Game Launch Studios shut its doors for good. By May 18th, just 3 days after the ruling, Austin's 3 co-founders filed a lawsuit against him for misusing investor funds. Arch. Turns out, promising investors a massive cash infusion and using that money to buy a luxury ride for yourself is a major legal disaster. Rachel sent me a screenshot from Reddit. Someone had posted the Tribune article to the Raised by Narcissists subreddit. The post blew up. 47,000 upvotes and thousands of comments. The exact same thing happened in my family. Arch. My uncle took off with my college fund. His stepmom actually had the nerve to say it's not ours. That's pure sociopathic behavior. Claiming he couldn't pull the money out while driving around in a Tesla is textbook trash. Keeping every single receipt was such a power move. My story went viral. Not for cheap entertainment, but because it struck a deep chord with so many people. Arch. Every single scapegoat who had ever been told to be the bigger person, every kid who had been drained dry and then called selfish, saw themselves in my story. On May 20th at 2 a.m., Austin texted me from a random number. "Victoria, please. I'm so sorry. I had no idea things would get this bad. Can we please talk? I'll do whatever it takes. Just drop the lawsuit. Arch. I promise I'll pay you back slowly. I swear." I read it through and showed it to Jennifer. "What do you want to do?" she asked. I typed back a single reply. "You had 3 months to do the right thing, but you chose to buy a Tesla instead. Now you get to feel what it's like to have your future taken away. That's the lesson you gave me." Then I blocked him. Arch. Brenda filed for divorce on June 2nd, citing irreconcilable differences. She demanded a 50-50 split of all marital assets. Arizona is a community property state, so she was entitled to her half. Dad was forced to sell the house. It went for $420,000. After clearing the mortgage and splitting the proceeds with Brenda, he was left with $210,000. Arch. But that entire chunk had to go straight to paying me back. The $195,000 principal plus interest, on top of $25,000 in legal fees. When the dust settled, his net worth was sitting at negative $28,000. Brenda took her half, moved to California, and remarried within 4 months. Her new husband was a real estate developer with way more money than my dad ever had. She erased me from every social media platform and blocked my number. I didn't feel a thing. No thrill, no urge for revenge. Just a deep, quiet sense that the universe was finally balancing out. Over the next 2 weeks, my dad tried calling me 12 times. I didn't pick up once. He left voice notes, each one sounding more desperate than the last. "Victoria, please. I know I messed up. I lost everything. The house, my marriage, my reputation. And I lost you. Please, sweetheart. I'm your dad. I made a mistake. I was terrified back then. Brenda threatened to leave me, and I panicked. I made the wrong choice. I know I did. You were right about everything. I was weak. I let her control me. But I'm still your dad. Doesn't that count for anything?" His 12th message said, "I have nothing left, no wife, no home, no savings, just this rundown apartment and my own regret. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just want you to know I'm sorry. I am so, so sorry." I listened to that last message 3 times, then deleted every single one of them. Rachel asked, "You're not going to reply? Not even to tell him off?" No. He doesn't get my words anymore. He doesn't get my time. He doesn't get me. That's cold, Vic. No, that's a boundary. There's a big difference. On June 15th, I sent one final email. Subject: Final communication, Dad. You didn't lose your daughter today. You lost her back on February 14th. That was the day you chose Brenda's ultimatum over my surgery. That was the day you signed my future away just to keep your own life comfortable. I don't hate you. Hating you takes energy, and I need every bit of mine to recover. But today, I choose myself. I choose my healing. I choose the people who stand by me, even when they have no legal obligation to do so. Setting boundaries isn't betrayal. Setting boundaries is self-love. This is my line in the sand. Do not contact me again. Victoria. Hit send. Blocked his email. Blocked his number. Closed that chapter for good. Austin ended up working as a dishwasher at a Denny's on McDowell Road. His Instagram went private and his bio went from CEO of Game Launch Studios to completely blank. A coworker from my clinic recognized him there and told me he looked exhausted and years older. A strange feeling brushed over me. Not sympathy, just the quiet realization that actions have consequences. Good, I said. And I meant it from the bottom of my heart. The fallout in our community was swift. The church group my dad belonged to stopped inviting him to gatherings. He used to be a deacon there, but they asked him to step down. Brenda's friends, the ones who had shown up for that fake intervention, were making vague posts on Twitter about financial abuse and spotting the signs of domestic hardship. Not one of them mentioned how they had helped try to lock me away in a facility. Helen Crawford sent me a card in the mail. Justice isn't always loud and dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet and complete. So proud of you. Aunt Susan came over every week, bringing groceries and helping out with my physical therapy. I should have said something during that awful meeting, she told me one afternoon. I knew it was wrong, but I was so afraid of causing a family blowout. You're here now, I replied. That's what matters. Family is more than just blood, she said. It's the people who choose to stay. And I'm staying. May 25th, 7 a.m., surgery day. Dr. Reeves walked in himself to go over the final pre-op steps. We're going to fix this, Victoria. 6 hours, maybe 7. When you wake up, your life gets back on track. Rachel held my hand right up until they wheeled me into the OR. See you on the other side, she said. Jennifer had sent flowers to my room with a note. Get your leg back, then go take your life back. At 3 p.m. I woke up in recovery. Groggy, disoriented, and aching all over. But Dr. Reeves was right there beside me. We did it. We saved the femoral head. It's going to be 6 months of intense rehab, Victoria. But you're going to walk again. You'll run. Hell, you can even dance if you want to. I broke down crying. Not from the pain, but from pure, overwhelming relief. By the time they moved me to a regular room, Rachel had been waiting for 6 hours. Your dad called the hospital, she said gently. He wanted an update on how you were doing. I told the front desk that no information is to be shared with anyone outside your approved list. Thank you, Vic. George. There's one more thing, and you might get a little mad at me, she added, raising an eyebrow. I raised mine right back. I started a GoFundMe for you. To cover your post-op care, the therapy, medications, and home assistance. I set the goal at $30,000. Rachel swallowed hard. Vic, it's already sitting at $43,000. Over 680 donors. Most of them are strangers who read the Tribune piece. George. Some are your former patients. Others are people who went through the exact same thing. She handed me her phone and the comments just kept rolling in. My dad pulled the same thing on me. Donating $500. Wishing you a speedy recovery. Stepmoms like Brenda leave deep scars. Here's $200. You inspired me to set my own boundaries. Thank you. $1,000. My voice hitched in my throat. George. Chosen family, Rachel whispered, is a lot bigger than you think. I hired Amanda Peterson to be my full-time caregiver. She was 50, fully licensed, warm, and took absolutely no nonsense. On top of that, she had known my mother before she passed away when I was 12. Your mom would be so proud of you, Amanda said as she guided me through a recovery stretch. Standing up to Kenneth like that. George. Drawing the line. Your mom tried to teach him that exact lesson years ago, but he just couldn't grasp it. You knew my parents back then? Honey, I was your mother's best friend. I watched Kenneth transform after he married Brenda. I watched him pull away from you, and it broke my heart. But you? She smiled warmly. You got your mother's backbone. George. For 8 long weeks, Amanda stayed by my side, cooking, cleaning, driving me to physical therapy, and filling the room like real family. The physical therapy was brutal. 3 days a week, 2 hours at a time. My therapist Marcus was a taskmaster. 10 more steps, Victoria. You've got this. I hate you right now. You'll be thanking me when you're back to running. He was right. George. By August, I ditched the crutches. By September, my limp was completely gone. By October, I started light jogging. Slow, painful, but I was doing it. November 10th marked 6 months since the surgery. I walked into Desert Health Clinic for my first day back at work. Just part-time, 4 hours a day, but I was back. George. My coworkers had completely decked out my office with balloons that said, "Welcome back, Victoria," banners, cake, and Lily. The 4-year-old girl I had promised to help run again before my accident. She was 8 now, fully recovered. She sprinted over and wrapped her arms around my legs. Miss Victoria, you walk just like me now. We did a quick lap around the clinic together. George. She was laughing hysterically, and happy tears were running down my face. That was why I fought so hard. Not for payback, but for this exact moment, to keep my promises. On December 1st, my therapist officially cleared me. No more restrictions, Victoria. You're back to 100%. I walked out of that appointment and stood in the parking lot, just taking deep, full breaths. George. 6 months ago, I thought I was going to lose my leg. Now I was whole again. Not because of my dad, not because of a payout, because I fought for myself. Because Rachel fought alongside me. Because Jennifer believed in justice. Because Helen risked her career for me. Because Amanda stood by my side. Because chosen family is stronger than blood could ever be. George. I moved into my own place, a 1-bedroom at Mountain View Apartments right near the clinic. My first night there, I cooked a simple pasta dinner. Nothing fancy. I invited Rachel and Jennifer over. We sat on the floor. I hadn't even bought furniture yet, and ate off paper plates. Jennifer raised her plastic cup. To Victoria. When they tried to crush her, she chose to stand tall. George. Rachel raised hers, to boundaries. I raised mine too, to chosen family. To standing up for yourself and to surviving right in front of the people who thought you were too weak to fight back. Our cups clinked together. And in that moment, I felt it for real. The one thing I'd been searching for over the last 6 months. Peace. Fast forward to May 2026. George. I was running a 5K charity race called Phoenix Strong, raising support for accident survivors. My time. 32 minutes and 18 seconds. Not lightning fast, but I crossed that finish line. Rachel and I ran it together, just like we'd planned. The announcer called out over the speakers, Victoria Hayes, survivor, physical therapist, and founder of the Sarah Hayes Foundation. Cheers and applause filled the air. The foundation was named after my mother, created to provide legal and financial advocacy for accident victims facing family financial abuse. We partnered with Jennifer's law firm, and we'd already taken on 3 cases, winning 2, with 1 still pending. We're small, but we're making a real difference. April 2026. A handwritten letter arrived in my mailbox. The return address read, Kenneth Hayes. I held it, staring at it for 5 full minutes. Rachel was sitting across from me, drinking coffee. Aren't you curious what it says? Not really, I replied. Real closure never comes from the people who hurt you. It comes from moving forward. I dropped the letter into a drawer, labeled it Past, and closed it. She shook her head. No, there's something else. My stomach tightened. Susan's expression stayed completely neutral. What else? I asked. Allison stared down at the key. I need you to understand that I didn't just wake up one morning and decide your house was mine. I never said you did. It was just a series of small choices. Her voice dropped lower. I told myself you'd want to downsize eventually anyway. Then I told myself there was no harm in checking property values. Then I told myself talking to a realtor wasn't a big deal. And finally, I told myself that giving Michael the key was just to save everyone some time. She looked up at me. Every step I took made the next one seem a little less extreme. That was almost word for word what Patricia had said. One excuse at a time, slowly building up. Allison started crying harder. I knew that if I stopped and asked you outright, you'd probably say no. There it was. The raw truth sitting right beneath every single excuse, so you avoided asking entirely. Yes. I felt my own eyes welling up. Allison, do you have any idea how terrifying this was for me? She nodded slowly. I do now. I picked up the key with the blue rubber ring. You are not having a key to my house for the foreseeable future. She closed her eyes. You're not handling my bills anymore. A single tear slid down her cheek. And unless I specifically ask you to, you are never contacting any professionals on my behalf again. Okay, and you are never ever treating my home like a pile of cash waiting to be tapped into. She nodded again. Okay. I thought drawing that boundary would bring a wave of satisfaction, but it didn't. I just felt like a heartbroken mother watching her daughter finally grasp the true weight of what she had broken. Then Allison spoke up again. There's one more thing I haven't told you. Brian looked over at her. What is it? She glanced at Susan, then turned back to me. That deposit. It wasn't just for the new house. My heart sank into my stomach. What do you mean? Allison clenched her hands tightly. Scott's company needs a bridge loan to refinance. We were trying to consolidate some debt just to keep the business afloat. You mentioned that to me before. I didn't tell you the whole story. I waited while she struggled to find the words. Finally, she blurted out, I told someone we had family financial assistance coming our way real soon. Susan leaned in slightly. What exactly did you promise them? Allison looked panicked. I didn't put Mom's house up as collateral. I swear I didn't use the house. Then what was it? I just said we were expecting funds from the family. Brian asked, how much? I didn't give them a guaranteed number. My voice was quiet, but firm, but you convinced them it was a done deal. Allison nodded. I felt the last missing pieces fall right into place. The sudden rush, the end of the month deadline, the obsession with closing quickly. You didn't just hope I'd help, I said. You needed me to, because you already wrote a check with your mouth that you couldn't cash. She covered her face with her hands. For several long seconds, nobody said a word. Then she dropped her hands and looked me dead in the eye. I already promised that money to someone else. Suddenly, everything made complete sense. I finally understood why my daughter was rushing so fast. She wasn't just planning my future, She was desperately trying to make my life cover a bad check she had already handed out. Allison's words seemed to suck all the air right out of the room. Rain tapped softly against the dining room window, and the clock above the kitchen door ticked quietly forward a minute. I looked over at Susan. She sat completely still. "What exactly did you promise?" she asked. Allison swallowed hard. "I need to explain." "Then explain," I said. She stared down at her hands. Scott's business, Reynolds Home Renovation, had been going for 11 years. For most of that time, things were solid. They had 7 employees and provided a comfortable living for Allison and Scott. Then 3 separate projects hit major snags at the same time. A commercial remodel got dragged out for months. A homeowner disputed the final bill and refused to pay, and Scott paid up front for materials on a new job, only for the client to cancel out of nowhere. 1 issue turned into 3. 3 issues turned into heavy debt. They drained their savings, maxed out credit cards, and pulled equity from their own home. By the time Scott finally admitted how bad things were, they were on the brink of missing payroll and mortgage payments. "So how did I get dragged into this?" I asked. Allison wiped her cheeks. "They were trying to refinance some commercial debts." "Who's they?" "Scott and his financial advisor." "They were looking at legitimate financing options, including a private lender." Susan leaned forward. "Did you pledge your mother's property as collateral?" "No," Allison answered immediately. "Absolutely not." "Did you claim any ownership stake in her house?" "No." "Did you sign Winifred's name on anything?" "No." "Did you present any paperwork claiming you had control over her finances?" "No." Susan gave a single nod. "Go on." Allison looked back at me. "The lender wanted to know how we were going to stabilize our personal finances, since our personal debt was sky high too. So, you brought up the smaller home you wanted to buy." "Yes." "The original plan was to sell their current place, buy a smaller one, cut their monthly expenses, and use whatever equity was left to stabilize things." That part made sense on paper, but the numbers were too tight, so Allison, you made the books look better. I said we were expecting family assistance. How much? I didn't give a specific dollar amount. That's not what I asked. She looked down. I said it could be a very substantial amount. Brian leaned back in his chair, shaking his head in disbelief. "Based on Mom selling her house." Allison nodded. "And handing a chunk of the profit over to you guys," he added, another nod. I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. Maybe when betrayal stacks up enough, it stops shocking you and just starts explaining things. "You wrote my generosity directly into your financial statements." Allison broke down crying. "Yes. Before you even asked me? Yes. Why? Because I was terrified." "You keep using that word, but it's true." Her voice cracked. I watched Scott fall apart day by day. He stopped sleeping. Every time the phone rang, he thought it was a creditor. I started waking up every morning scared we were going to lose our own home. Scott wasn't there that afternoon, but suddenly I pictured him from Saturday's dinner. The dark circles under his eyes, the weight loss, the shame he was trying so hard to hide. For a brief second, I felt a ping of sympathy. But then I remembered the key. Fear explained Allison's choices, but it didn't excuse them. Brian asked, "Does Scott know what you told the lender?" Allison hesitated. "He knows I mentioned possible family assistance. Does he know Mom never agreed to it?" "No." I closed my eyes. Another reality carefully managed by Allison on someone else's behalf. "So you lied to your husband too." I kept thinking I could sort everything out before anyone got hurt. I looked straight at her. "And how were you planning to sort it out?" She wiped her face. "You'd sell the house, you'd find a smaller place, you'd have plenty of money left over. Then I'd explain everything to you. You'd be upset at first, but once you saw how desperate things were, you'd forgive me and help us out." Right, that honesty hurt worse than another excuse ever could. "Because mothers always step up for their kids," she whispered. I leaned back in my chair. There it was, the core belief sitting at the bottom of every excuse: entitlement. She looked at me, desperate for a sliver of hope. If you had come to me honestly, I actually would have considered helping you. I know. No, Allison. You only know that, now. I pointed at the key with the blue rubber ring. Porch. If 3 months ago you had sat right in this room and said, "Mom, we're drowning, we're ashamed, and we need your advice," this would have been a completely different conversation. I thought you'd say no. You took away my right to make that choice. Brian said softly, "That's the whole problem, Allison." She turned to look at him. Porch. You treated Mom's answer like a problem you needed to manage, instead of a choice you needed to respect. Allison covered her mouth, sobbing quietly for several long moments. Susan finally spoke up. What happens if your mother doesn't offer any financial help? Allison dropped her hands. We have to restructure everything. Meaning what? Sell our current home. Forget about the new place. Porch. Scott might have to downsize the business. Will the company go under? Maybe. The word was barely a whisper. Will you be homeless? No. Will you go hungry? No. Are your children in any physical danger? No. Susan kept her tone gentle. So things are tough. But this isn't an absolute disaster that requires sacrificing Winifred's security in her golden years to fix. Porch. Allison stared down at the table. No. That line was crucial. They stood to lose status, comfort, a business Scott poured his heart into, and a home they were proud of. Those losses would hurt, but they had no right to transfer that pain onto me. Brian reached across the table and took his sister's hand. She didn't pull away. Porch. I'm still furious with you, he said, but I'll help you go through the numbers. Allison looked at him, stunned. You will? I'll help you figure out where you stand. But I'm not promising you cash. That was the first time I saw the clear line between saving someone and supporting them play out right in front of me. Allison saw it, too. She nodded. Thank you. Porch. The thick tension in the room loosened just a bit. Then Allison turned to me. What happens now? You two are going to figure out your finances without selling my house. She nodded. And what about us? That question was much harder to answer. I haven't figured that out yet. Tears welled up in her eyes again. I love you. I love you too. Do you still trust me? I looked down at the key. Porch. No. That answer cut us both deep. But trust is something that can be rebuilt over time. She broke down crying again. I reached across the table and rested the back of my hand over hers. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. It was just proof that even with all the fallout, love refuses to walk away. Then Allison glanced at Susan's folder, and her expression shifted. The fear rushed back. Porch. I need to ask one thing. Susan waited. Allison looked right at me. Are you changing Dad's trust? I didn't answer. She kept going. Because of everything I did. Brian pulled his hand back. Allison, don't. I need to know. She stared straight at me. Are you taking me out of the will? The room fell dead silent again. Porch. In my mind, I could hear George's voice. The kids should inherit whatever is left after we've lived our lives. I looked at my daughter. A week ago, that question would have sent me into a rage. But sitting here now, I heard something else behind it. Fear of punishment. Fear of losing her father all over again. Porch. Fear that a string of terrible, selfish choices had permanently wrecked her place in this family. I haven't made any final decisions about the trust, I said. Allison swallowed hard. But I have made up my mind about something much more important. What? I will never again allow either of you to treat my assets like money you already own. She looked down, unable to meet my eyes. Porch. The next morning, I met with Susan one-on-one. Not to punish Allison and not to reward Brian, just to make sure George's estate plan protected what it was always meant to protect. My life while I'm still here. Sitting across from Susan the next morning, George's estate folder lay on the table between us. I don't want to punish her, I said. Susan nodded. That's a good place to start. Porch. But part of me is angry enough that I want to. That's completely normal. I looked down at George's handwriting on the folder. I just don't want to make a permanent decision based on emotions I'm feeling this week. Susan leaned back in her chair. That's precisely why people should review estate plans when things are calm, not use them as weapons during a family blowout. Porch. The word weapon stuck with me. That was the exact thing I wanted to avoid. Allison had treated my house like a tool to solve her money problems. I didn't want to turn around and use disinheritance like a leash around her neck. So what actually needs to change? Susan opened the trust summary. Let's separate this into two parts. First, how do you protect yourself while you're alive? George. Second, what do you want to happen after you're gone? I nodded. The first one is what matters most. Susan smiled gently. George would agree. We spent nearly 2 hours going over everything. The trust, my investment accounts, beneficiary designations, emergency contacts, joint accounts, insurance, and the house itself. To my surprise, very few major edits were actually needed. George's plan had been built on a simple foundation. My security comes first. Brian and Allison were ultimate beneficiaries. Ultimate. That word suddenly meant everything. They didn't own a single percentage of my current life. They had no right to sit around calculating how much might be left over down the road. Susan suggested tightening up the administrative rules, so there would be zero confusion moving forward about who could request information or act on my behalf. Any future help given to either child would be officially documented for what it truly was. A gift, if I chose to give one. Not an advance they could demand. Not an expectation. And definitely not leverage to control other assets. What about Allison's inheritance? I asked. That's entirely your call. What do you want to do? Susan gave a slight smile. You don't pay me to decide which of your kids deserves your money. I couldn't help but laugh. Fair enough. So ask yourself what outcome you actually want. I thought back to when Allison was 7, running into my bedroom during a thunderstorm. When she was 17, crying her eyes out over a college rejection letter. When she was 28, holding my first granddaughter out for me to take in the hospital room. And then I pictured Michael turning the key in my front door. Both versions of my daughter were real, as hard as that was to swallow. People always want betrayal to turn someone into a total villain, because villains are easier to deal with. But Allison was still the woman who called me every single Mother's Day. Still the daughter who sat by George's side during chemotherapy. Still a regular person who got terrified, decided she was entitled to control an outcome, and made a series of selfish, terrible choices. I don't want to cut her out, I said. Susan nodded. Then don't. But I don't want her thinking she can walk all over my life without consequences either. Those are two different things, I looked at her. Susan continued, you changed the locks, you updated the authorizations, you took away her financial access. You made it crystal clear that she cannot plan her life around your property. Those are the consequences. She tapped the trust folder. Disinheriting her doesn't need to be another one. That afternoon, I called Brian. He had stayed the night in Richmond, so we met up at a local coffee shop. I'm keeping Allison in the will, I told him. Brian stirred his coffee. Okay, you don't sound surprised. I'm not. Why? Because you're my mom, he smiled softly. Then his expression turned serious. But you tightened things up. Just some administrative safeguards. Nothing turned into a battleground. Brian nodded. I studied him closely. You should understand something too. What's that? This isn't about casting Allison as the villain and turning you into the saint. He looked taken aback. Mom, I know. But families slip into those rigid roles way too easily. I reached across the table. You don't get to lay claim to my house either. Brian let out a soft laugh. I know. And you don't get to claim my investments. I know. If you live to be 100 and spend every single dime on cruises and ridiculous hats, I'll take whatever's left. He burst out laughing. Please buy at least a few ridiculous hats. Allison called that night, her voice cautious. Brian said you went to see Susan. I did. A pause. Did you take me out of the will? No. She broke down, crying almost instantly. I waited in quiet silence. Thank you, she sobbed. Don't thank me just yet, she quieted down. I didn't leave everything the way it was. I understand. No, I want you to understand the specifics. I explained that my finances were remaining completely under my control. Any future distribution of funds would happen on strict terms. No one gets to treat my assets like an advance on their inheritance. No one gets to force me into liquidating property so they can cash out. And no one gets to map out their life based on what they expect to receive after I'm gone. Holding on to what belongs to me isn't a punishment for you, I said. Allison took a shaky breath. I know. Do you really? I'm starting to. Then she told me about the decisions she and Scott had made. They walked away from the new house. The plan to use my money for a down payment was completely scrapped. They had an honest conversation with their lender, correcting the misleading claim that family assistance was guaranteed. We're listing our house for sale. Your house? I asked. Yes. What about Scott's business? He's scaling it down. 3 employees had already found work elsewhere, and Scott was selling off equipment they no longer needed. They were renegotiating payment terms and slashing their personal expenses down to the bone. It's going to be a tough road ahead, Allison said. I'm so sorry I let fear take over. Then she added something I never expected to hear. But we made this mess, and it's ours to fix. I closed my eyes. Hearing that carried far more weight than any apology she could have given. Yes, I said quietly, it is yours to fix. I wish I'd understood that sooner. Me too. A heavy silence fell between us, not comfortable, but no longer bitter. Can we still get lunch sometime? She asked. Eventually. The word hit hard, and I could hear it. But patchworking trust back together just to avoid awkwardness, simply because someone is hurting, isn't real trust. That's just running away from discomfort. I need time. I understand. After hanging up, I sat alone in the living room. George's photograph sat on the mantel. For days, I had pictured dramatic scenes of justice. Moments where Allison lost everything. But that wasn't real justice. Justice is Allison selling her own house, not mine. Justice is Scott restructuring his own business, instead of filling his financial holes with my retirement security. Justice is me staying comfortably in my home, without offering a single apology for it. And maybe most importantly, justice is refusing to let someone else's unfairness turn me into a bitter, cruel person. I maintain only one family tie now. Aunt Susan. We get lunch once a month, just the 2 of us. She always gives me updates without me even having to ask. Kenneth is getting by, doing a little financial consulting. A few clients here and there. He's in therapy now. He asks about you constantly. I just nod. Brenda's in California, already divorced that real estate guy and remarried. Some tech investor, apparently. I take a sip of my coffee. Austin's back in school, community college, studying business. Sounds like he's doing all right. That's good. Susan looks at me. You don't want to know anymore? I have sympathy for their struggles, but sympathy and reconciliation aren't the same thing. I can wish them well from a distance, but that's as far as it goes. You've grown up. No, that's just self-preservation. After the trial, I started therapy, working with Dr. Linda Warren for 18 months. Our final session was in March 2026. You've processed your trauma, Victoria, she told me. You're not just a survivor anymore, you're living. What's the difference? A survivor is constantly reacting to the past. Someone who is living is creating their future, and that's what you're doing. She was right. I refuse to let what they did define me. I will be defined by what I build next. One final scene. May 2026. Standing on my apartment balcony at sunrise with a cup of pour-over coffee and a journal. I wrote, "This was never a story about money. This was a story about self-worth. Your value isn't given to you by your family. It's something you claim for yourself. My dad didn't take away my ability to stand tall. He just showed me who was actually standing beside me, and who truly deserved to be there. Boundaries aren't a betrayal. Boundaries are love. They're love for yourself, protection for your future, and the unwavering resolve to stop shrinking just to make others comfortable. They thought relying on crutches meant I was weak. But real strength was never in my legs. It was in my spine, in my voice, and in the courage to refuse manipulation and silence. I learned that the family who shows up when you need them matters so much more than the family assigned to you at birth. Blood is an accident of birth. Chosen family is a deliberate choice of the heart, and on that choice I chose well. I close the journal and look out toward Camelback Mountain as the morning sun paints the sky in shades of gold and pink. It's breathtaking. I am 33 years old, healthy, working full-time and running a nonprofit. I'm surrounded by people who love me simply because they choose to, not because blood forced them to pretend. My dad didn't take away my strength. He just taught me who was worthy of standing beside me. The answer is me. Always, unconditionally, putting myself first. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to choose between keeping a fake family peace and saving yourself, please share it. Someone out there might need permission to set their own boundaries today. Someone might need to hear these words. You are not selfish for protecting yourself. You are not cruel for walking away from people who drain you. You are not betraying your family by choosing to survive. Boundaries are not a betrayal. They are the purest form of self-love. Thank you for sticking with me through this journey. If you took something away from this, let me know in the comments. What boundaries do you need to set? What patterns do you need to break? Let's talk about it. Because you deserve to stand up for yourself even if you have to do it alone. Especially then.